Tell me kind of a memorable time you reached to someone or somebody reached out to you.
So like if someone's commenting a lot of my posts on LinkedIn, like I like to take things quote unquote offline, but kind of how you and I are doing right now. And like kind of getting to know the other person, off of the platform.
Yeah.
And so this was probably a year ago, 6 months to a year ago, something around that time. And one of my connections who had been dropping by on my post quite often, leaving really insightful comments. And I was like, oh, like, let me get to know him. And so like we were writing back and forth and I was like, hey, such and such, would you like to do like a virtual coffee chat or whatever? I'd really love a chance to like catch up with you off of LinkedIn. He's from India and he said something along the lines of, he sent me a voice note and he was like, within that voice note, he said something along the lines of like, this is as good as my English gets. So if that's okay with you, then let's meet. And it just, oh my gosh, Hashem, it broke my heart hearing that. I'm also a second language learner, Spanish, and I know what it's like to reach out to people who are, I don't like to use the word native speakers, but I will because it's widely understood.
Right.
But I know what it's like to speak to native Spanish speakers, and because of my accent, I know they understand me and I know they know what I'm saying, but there's kind of like, to just make it really awkward, right?
Right.
Sometimes they pretend like they don't understand you. And it's like, you always have that fear that you carry with you. I'm like, okay, is it worth getting embarrassed again for someone like bringing attention to my accent? Because if I just, don't talk to anyone, then like I don't get that embarrassment anymore.
Right.
So yeah, he said that and it was like, it really hit home for me. It really, really, really hit home for me.
So what did you tell him?
I didn't share the entire context with him like I did with you just now, but I did tell him like, don't even worry about it. Like, we'll make it work. Like, even if you spoke 2 words of English, like we'll do, hand gestures or whatnot. Like, don't worry about it. So we're in the 21st century. Oh my gosh.
So some people would pretend that they do not understand you. Why?
Oh my gosh. So I don't know if that's the exact way to describe it, but I kid you not. Like my partner is Peruvian. And so we'll go out and eat at restaurants and I'll say something to the waiter in Spanish and they'll kind of look at me like, what did you just say? And he will say the exact same words I said, but in his native accent. And they'll be like, oh yeah. And they'll understand him. And I'll be like, that's exactly what I said. And my accent's not that bad. I mean, come on.
So what's the kind of hypothesis or what's going on there?
I think this is how I reason it out, that so there's a lot of Venezuelan refugees in South America currently because of the crisis that's been going on in Venezuela for several years now.
Right.
And so at first glance, people don't assume that I'm from the States. They think that I'm either Peruvian, African Peruvian, or they think I'm Venezuelan. So I think like they come into that, like they're about to speak to me and they think, oh, she's Peruvian or she's Venezuelan. And then I speak to them in Spanish and I think like what they're thinking is, wait, she's not Peruvian and she's not Venezuelan. I can't quite pick up her accent. Like, what did she say to me? Like, what? Like, I think there's just kind of that disconnect between what they thought and the actual reality that's occurring in this moment.
So from what I'm getting from you is that they're not sure what to make of you?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's a good way to put it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that one of the episodes that I was thinking of doing, ideas for this podcast, is to talk with somebody So I don't know Spanish at all. Very, very, very little. I was thinking of doing like a complete episode with somebody who is a native Spanish speaker who knows very, very little English. So we, by design, would have this kind of like challenge of communicating with each other. So either kind of like relying on hand gestures for the whole thing, or relying on Google Translate and seeing how it goes. So this is actually one of the
You'd
ideas
be
that.
you'd be surprised at how well you could get by with hand gestures and Google Translate.
Right. So yeah.
That'd be a super interesting episode.
So you review the work of others. Have you ever like thought to yourself, yeah, this guy doesn't, or this guy or gal does not really belong in this field. There's just no hope. Have you ever thought to yourself, and then have you ever verbalized this? And I'm assuming in a lighter way.
I've never thought that, all hope is lost for this person. They should not be in this industry. Because I mean, at the end of the day, we all started somewhere, right? And I look back at my old pieces personally, and I think, like, holy cow, someone paid me to write this. So yeah, I've never, that thought has never crossed my mind. Like, this person should completely change into a different profession. They're never going to get this. Because yeah, at the end of the day, it's just like people who put in more time and money into learning and advancing their trade are the ones who are advancing quicker and further. And others who aren't dedicating those resources are the ones who, could be falling behind, not picking up on things as quickly.
I guess my follow-up to that would be, do you think there's anything in writing that can't be taught? You just have to have it or don't, or not have it?
I don't think so. I feel
Okay.
like writing, it's like a muscle. Like, the more you exercise it, the stronger it gets. And I feel that way with anything in marketing. But yeah, writing specifically, I mean, the longer I write, and especially in more technical spaces like tech and SaaS, you kind of start to get like a feel for things in the writing. So for example, what I mean by that is, like, when it comes to transitions and making sure that things flow properly, like, the longer you write and the more you get a feel for like how ideas should connect to each other to make a coherent piece, like, the easier it becomes for you to pick up on areas where, it'd be better to transition it in this way, or what if I talked about this here instead. So yeah, I think that can be learned, definitely. It just takes a want to learn, time, other resources, money, and the more practice you do, the better you'll get at it.
You know how when you start a conversation with somebody, I mean, lots of people break the ice by talking about the weather.
Yes.
The weather is blah, blah, blah. What if you were attending a conference about the weather, and you're a weather, what's the profession called? People who not
Meteorologist?
Yes, meteorologists. What if you're a meteorologist at a meteorology conference? Would you break the ice by talking about the weather?
So you're saying if I went to a meteorology conference and we're speaking with a meteorologist, would I break the ice talking about the weather?
No, if all the people there are meteorologists and they're talking, the agenda is to talk about the weather, would you break the ice by talking about the weather?
That's a good question. Not sure. Probably yes, as like a teaser to the main event, like whatever they're going to talk about in their presentation. but I'm sure this would probably come up as like an icebreaker.
Okay. The reason
Like,
I'm
you
asking,
know,
go ahead.
people talk about the weather, but it's kind of ironic because we're at a meteorology conference now and you're a meteorologist. So what do I ask you?
The reason I'm asking this is I thought about kind of like breaking the ice, and what usually people talk about things that are not directly relevant to the agenda or what's at hand. So I was thinking, why is that the case? Like, why is there this need to talk about something else and then move to the main topic? Why don't we just jump in? And I just didn't have like a good answer for that. So I was just wondering.
I think it depends on the culture. In the States, it's a lot more acceptable to just jump straight into business, depending on when was the last time you spoke to that person.
Right.
So, for example, at the startup that I'm working at, like let's imagine that today's Tuesday. So, Monday, my supervisor and I already finished talking about the weekend shenanigans, whatnot.
Yeah.
Then Tuesday, we have like a meeting early morning, 10 a.m. Like we'd probably just jump straight into whatever it is that we need to talk about because, we already caught up on Monday. But down here, specifically in Peru, and don't want to generalize and say across Central and South America, but Peru specifically, it's super rude if you just get straight to business. Like
Right.
they expect you to make some sort of small talk, even if it's like super superficial. Like it's kind of just, a part of doing business down here and living down here that you talk about something other than business before you start talking about business.
Right.
Mhm.
As you were talking, I came up with a hypothesis as you were saying this, is that maybe we as human beings want to assure that the other person is that I'm not just talking to you because of this business need or this need that I have. I'm interested in you as a person, even if this need wasn't there. I don't know.
I could see that.
Yeah, I'm gonna call after we finish, I'm gonna call the anthropological society and bring it up with my brand new hypothesis. Yeah,